Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh and we have a new map, event and lore incoming for Overwatch in the 2019 Archives event. The first teaser has been released and it already points all of these things as happening because we seem to be off to Cuba. But why are we off to Cuba and what will the story around it be? Well, in an article from a local Havana newspaper talking about a rum brand and the change of ownership on the city and indeed on Cuba itself, we get a few little teasers as to what might be coming up, I think. So I'm going to read through this. The image is in Spanish, but the blog is all available in English on the Overwatch blog. If you want to read it, I will make it quick and then I will analyse it too. Timecodes are in the description below if you want to skip to the analysis. In the past, of course, we have had the teaser in the Numbani airport on the Overwatch PTR showing a poster detailing Havana, Cuba. So this is another Cuban piece following it up. It's the Havana Sun newspaper, and I'm going to quickly read through this and pick out some details before going into deeper analysis. So, how Don Rumbotico's international fame is slowly erasing its founders from the narrative. Well, we have the Havana Sun. We have a date of 2060 as the copyright, and also another mention of 2060 in this article. More on that later in terms of timelining and dating, an interesting fact. So for our translation, which I'll read through quickly, we have a local legacy forgotten as the headline. How Don Rumbotico's international fame is slowly erasing its founders from the narrative. De la historia, from history. And we have a little article about a hurricane incoming here. Now that is important and interesting. We'll talk about that later. But first, the main article. These days, everyone knows Don Rumbotico. Savor quality, only the best, as the taglines. Ads in rich, warm colours and a logo featuring a well-dressed Omnic that we can see up here, top, front and centre in the middle there, and more on him and that branding later. I think that's of interest. Note how this screenshot, by the way, is very much looking like an in-game model detailing a map, therefore this most likely being the map. Only a few outside of Havana know of the distillery's hometown roots and controversial recent history, historia reciente. Now, Don Rumbotico was never meant to be a major operation, says Alicia Diaz, their many generations great-granddaughter. We sit together in a local bar, says the writer of the article, and a giant billboard advertising Don Rumbotico, only the best, is visible from the window. Back then, it was really about quality. Almost 2 centuries ago, Clara and Basilio Diaz used their savings to open a small rum distillery. It was a modest family business specialising in small batch barrel-aged rum. Now, until 2060, hasta 2060, few outside of Cuba knew the name Don Rumbotico, but the brand was wildly popular in Havana. Alicia, like the generations of Diaz's before her, is an expert rum maker, ronera experta. Now, the classic Don Rumbotico recipe is a closely guarded family secret and one celebrated as a Cuban favourite. But things have changed in recent years. An anonymous financial group expressed interest in purchasing the company and distillery. They offered us a lot of money, Alicia said. It could have changed our lives, but Don Rumbotico is my family's legacy and you can't put a price on that. At first, the Diaz family refused, but then rum shipments began to go missing. When the distillery burned down in a suspected case of arson, the Diaz family was left with nothing. They were forced to sell the company for a sliver of its worth. Now, Don Rumbotico is a worldwide brand and its unfortunate history has been sanitized for public consumption. Basilio Diaz, his kindly, familiar visage on the label is gone, replaced by shiny chrome, replaced un omnico. The distillery has been rebuilt, but the recipes are different. You can taste the difference. It's not the same, laments Alicia. I love that. In the English blog, it says Alicia, but se lamenta, laments Alicia. I love that. Don Rumbotico isn't the only beloved local icon to suffer unwelcome changes. Now, this is interesting. The Havana Fort, a historical landmark, la Fortaleza Militar de la Habana, has been protected by the Cuban government for centuries. But 2 years ago, it was bought by the same group who purchased Don Rumbotico and became private property. Like the rum distillery, the Seafort too is now almost unrecognisable. Security guards patrol its grounds and unfamiliar helicopters traffic through its airspace while its doors remain closed to the public for tiempo indefinido, time unforeseeable future. The face of Havana is changing, Alicia says. Throughout our conversation, she hasn't touched her drink. Don Rumbotico gazes down from the billboard outside, the brim of his fedora casting a shadow over his metal face. Sometimes it feels like we're losing a piece of ourselves, or maybe we've already lost it. Now, a quick note on this storm. Cuba braces for Hurricane Fernand. Now, Hurricane Fernand swept in from the Atlantic on Tuesday, flooding the Florida coastline and heading south towards the Bahamas. The Category 3 storm is due to hit Guadalajara by Tuesday and work its way up the coast to Havana. Winds of up to 193 kilometers an hour are projected, along with substantial flooding. Communities along the coastline are being evacuated. Hurricane Ferdinand there is expected to cause massive damage even inland. It's not a small storm, said Governor Oriol Delgado during a press conference. Don't try and wait it out. Take every precaution to ensure your safety and head inland as soon as possible. So we have what looks like a Cuban map. Zoom and enhance into the front of the distillery and you can see that someone is monitoring the storm. So I think this storm, it's either just a complete incidental or it's a factor somehow in the story. What are we doing in the map? Are we pushing it in a sort of payload style or similar? Are we perhaps attacking or perhaps liberating someone from this map before the storm arrives? Many interesting questions as to what we're doing, but the storm seems to be part of the story in this map, and I'm wondering if it's a bit of a factor in terms of why we're trying to get into or get out of here or protect here or take something from here or protect someone or take someone from here before this storm comes in and makes things impossible, perhaps. So an interesting little detail. I don't think the storm is insignificant here. What is this story of this rum distillery, of this local fort and everything else tying into the story and the timeline? Is this the past? Is this the present? What can we potentially learn about the upcoming Archives event? I think we're going to get some new story. I think we might see Talon and a potential Talon Omnic that we know and love involved. Nice little detail on the bottom right here. Viola and Orsino. That's a reference to Viola and Orsino from, of course, Shakespeare's play Twelfth Night, and Orsino and the confused scene there on the balcony. A very funny play. So there is everything, but what can we learn about a rum brand in terms of what this is going to be? Well, I think there's a few interesting things here in terms of analysis. This, I believe, and this is a guess, and I know people will disagree with me, but we'll find out in a week or so. Remember, there was a leak from the Overwatch website apparently saying that the event will start on April the 16th. That looked like a screenshot or similar from the website. So we're going to find out pretty soon anyway. I reckon this is present day. Now, I know that there's a couple of references in there to 2060, both in terms of the paper. There's that copyright. I reckon, a lot of newspapers at the top say established 2060. A lot of newspapers in their letterhead, in their masthead at the top of the newspaper on the front cover will say when they were founded. So I reckon maybe this Havana paper was established in 2060. Also, the reference in 2060 in the actual article, it's nothing relative. It's a reference date, and that reference date is basically just saying when the Don Rumbotico distillery became more famous for its product outside of Cuba. That's all the 2060 in the actual article says to us. However, I like it as a reference date because of the tone and feeling of the article. Now, in 2014, back when Overwatch was unveiled at BlizzCon, it was cited in panels and various information then that Overwatch was founded 30 or so years in the future from the present day. So from 2014, a lot of timeliners and Overwatch timelighting until now maybe has been a relatively inexact science because of various conflicting information from Blizzard in the past, or very vague information that we've speculated on. 30 years in the future from 2014, a lot of people have said, Overwatch roughly founded, as well as Overwatch being founded around the start of the first Omnic Crisis, Overwatch founded, let's say, 2044. And oh blimey, I have been making Overwatch videos for 5 years, as a little aside. Thanks if you've been with me any fraction of this time or even before. We know that 2 centuries ago, according to the article, the distillery first opened. I think that because the article says things have changed in recent years given the ownership and similar, 2060 in this article to me feels like a bit more on the recent end of history than 200 years ago. I think that's fair. There's nothing definitive here saying when this is published. The one little clue that we do get is a mention of the island being bought 2 years ago. So it feels like all of this activity to do with the distillery, all of this activity to do with the island being bought, it feels like it's all pretty recent to this article being written and this interview being done. It said things have changed over the last few years. So that just makes the whole thing feel that it's kind of quite in the present of this article. And then, of course, do you think that this article was published in the present day or in the past? But all of this seems to be feeling as if it's happening relatively close to this article's published date or creation date, whenever that was. How you personally judge this article? To me, this feels like a more up-to-date article, if not in the present day. I don't think we're going to be going hugely far back into Overwatch's past with this one, which leads to the exciting possibility, and I'm going to speculate that this is a current day will be a current day event, and we will see the lore move forward or more coverage in the present day. Something that, of course, us lore fans have been excited for a long period of time, and I can't wait to see what this is. So what could it be about? Well, I think we need to look at this anonymous financial group and the various dealings around it and the detail which it's mentioned within this article in various ways. To me, I'm going to speculate Talon activity or another threat perhaps associated with it. Now, look at the modus operandi, the way in which this anonymous financial group goes about securing these assets in the area. They wanted to buy the Diaz business. They offered a lot of money, the family refused, and then the rum shipments went missing, a little bit of extortion, pressure, squeezing there. We then saw a burning down of the distillery, suspected arson, and then the family were forced to sell it for a fraction of the price. And then suddenly it gets rebranded as this kind of Don Rumbotico. We have the shiny chrome, this well-dressed omnic, as it's described as the new branding. I just have a little bit of headcanon theory on that in a bit. We then also see the mentions of this Havana Fort, a landmark bought by the same group. Now, there's loads of security guards there. It's not open to the public, helicopters back and forth through its airspace. This pretty much sounds like getting a business in the area, establishing a foothold in the area, then establishing effectively a base in the area with this Havana Fort. Who is doing this? Well, if it's not Talon, who is it? Do you know what I mean? Is it some local powerhouse? Is it something in the past? I mean, these are all perfectly possible at this stage, but to me, I'm going to stick a pin in and say this sounds like something Talon-y. And then my final theory and thought about all this and speculation is I just like the look of this well-dressed Omnic. Now, we don't hear huge amounts at all really about Omnics in powers of prestige or strength in the Overwatch universe, let alone well-dressed. And really the only one that we've really heard of or seen in any detail or a couple of times is Maximilian. And of course, upon his introduction in Doomfist's comic Masquerade, he was very popular. People were very interested in him. We've seen him pop up here and there elsewhere in other assets, you know, like Moira's origin, for example. So a well-dressed Omnic. I can see Max. Max described, of course, in Masquerade comic as the money man, as the person that Reaper says Doomfist should go to sort out some money and things like that, as potentially being someone working in this kind of way. Max more interested in the financial side of things, setting up business, doing similarly. And as a well-dressed Omnic himself, I can quite see Max deciding that, you know what, he'd quite like perhaps, you know, whether it suits Talon's purposes or no, to own a rum distillery. And having a nice brand like that as well. So what do you guys think? I'd love to know your thoughts. We will certainly see more teasers in the coming week, I'm sure, if the sort of leak that we saw on the Overwatch website is true and correct. And April the 16th is not far away, so we could see some more teasers. We could then see an announcement perhaps next week. And then, of course, skins and things being released as well. But this is Cuba. This is going to be a new Archives event. If it's a new map and a new Archives event, that screenshot to me looks like a screenshot. So I think we're getting Cuba as followed up from the Nambani airport. My thinking, speculation at this point, based off all of these things, I think we're going to see Talon involved. I think this is close to, if not the present day, which could mean new characters involved in the Archives event. Who would you like to see? And I think we may well see Maximilian involved in some way or another. Do let me know your thoughts. I can't wait to see more. If you like this video, please throw a like, subscribe, comment with your theories. Are you looking forward to Archives? What do you think could happen from this in the comments below? Sorry I've been quiet for a while. I've updated on my community tab here on my YouTube channel a little bit as to why, and be prepared for videos in April, as well as some new stuff from myself and the mystery guest voiceover in the coming weeks ahead. Excited to be getting things going again and excited for Overwatch Archives as well as more. Do check my playlist here for more Overwatch videos, everything to do with lore, interactions, voice lines and more, as well as a bunch of other stuff too. Thanks for your support, and big shout out to my patrons on Patreon too. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.